Here is a television that is whiter than your couch. It's brighter than a sunny day. Its black is so black it vanishes into a dark room. It will still look this good in 20 years, with zero burn-in. And until very recently, it cost more than a car. This is a micro-LED screen. And the reason it was so absurdly expensive comes down to a jaw-dropping manufacturing problem, one that involves placing tens of millions of microscopic lights, almost perfectly. So what actually is this thing, and why is it suddenly getting affordable? Let's break it down. To understand why micro-LED is such a big leap, you first have to know a dirty little secret about the screen you're probably watching this on. Every screen makes a picture the same basic way. It's a giant grid of pixels, and each pixel is really three tiny lights, one red, one green, one blue. Mix those three at different strengths, and a single pixel can become any color you want. Millions of pixels, and you get an image. Simple. The hard part is always the same one question. Where does the light actually come from? Take a normal LCD TV, the most common kind for years. Here's the sneaky truth. In an LCD, the pixels don't make any light at all. Behind the entire screen is one big, always-on lamp, the backlight, blasting white light forward. Each pixel is basically a tiny window shutter with a colored filter, deciding how much of that light to let through. And that's the fatal flaw. When a pixel wants to show black, it has to try to block the backlight completely. But it can't, not fully. A little light always leaks through. So black on an LCD is really just dim gray. The lamp behind it never truly turns off. So engineers asked the obvious question. What if we get rid of the single backlight, and instead let every single pixel make its own light? That way, a black pixel just switches off. True black. That's the idea behind OLED, and it looks gorgeous. But OLED makes its light using organic material, and organic is a polite word for, it slowly wears out. Push those pixels bright for years, and they can dim unevenly, or leave a faint ghost of whatever was on screen too long. That's burn-in. So we had a frustrating choice. Cheap and bright, but muddy blacks. Or perfect blacks, but delicate and prone to aging. Micro-LED is the technology that refuses to compromise. And the idea, on paper, is beautifully blunt. You know, a regular LED. The little light on your charger. The flash on your phone. A traffic light. They're tough, they're blindingly bright, they last basically forever, and they are not organic. So what if you took a real, inorganic LED, and shrank it down to something smaller than a grain of dust? And then made every single subpixel, every tiny red, green, and blue to its very own microscopic LED? That's micro-LED. No backlight to leak. No filters to waste light. No organic anything to burn in. Every pixel is a self-contained, microscopic lamp that makes its own colored light and switches fully off when it needs to be black. You get the perfect blacks of OLED, and the brutal brightness and near-immortal lifespan of a hard LED, all at once. On paper, it is the best of everything. And it isn't a small win, either. A micro-LED can be many times brighter than an OLED, bright enough to look punchy in a sunlit room, not just a blacked-out home theater. And because each light is an efficient inorganic diode, it can reach those levels while sipping less power than a big backlight ever could. Brighter, tougher, longer-lived, and more efficient, all at the same time. The catch, it turns out, was never the picture. It was always the price. So if it's so perfect, why did it cost as much as a house? And here is the beautiful, painful catch. Think about how many of these microscopic lights you actually need. A single 4K screen has about 8 million pixels. But remember, each pixel is 3 separate lights. So a full 4K micro-LED display needs somewhere around 25 million individual microscopic LEDs, 25 million. And every last one of them has to be placed onto the screen in exactly the right spot, facing the right way, wired up perfectly. If a tiny handful of them are dead or crooked, you will see it as an ugly dark speck in your movie. This is the monster at the heart of micro-LED. It's called mass transfer. The LEDs are grown together on a small wafer, packed tight. But then they have to be lifted off and moved onto a much bigger screen, spaced far apart. And you cannot place 25 million specks of dust one at a time. If a machine placed one per second, a single television would take most of the year to build. It's completely impossible that way. To really picture the scale, a single one of these micro-LEDs can be smaller than the width of a human hair. You could line up a whole row of them across the period at the end of this sentence. Now scatter tens of millions of those across a panel the size of a door, each one landing in its own exact spot. That is the needle you have to thread, tens of millions of times, on every single screen you build. So the whole game became inventing machines that can grab tens of thousands of these microscopic LEDs at once, and stamp them all down together in a single motion, perfectly aligned, over and over, until the whole screen is filled. Some methods use a precision stamp. Others use pulses of laser light to blast each LED off the wafer and onto its target. Whatever the trick, this one manufacturing step, moving millions of specks quickly and near perfectly, is the entire reason micro-LED stayed a rich person's curiosity for so long. And it's tied to a second brutal problem. Yield. When you're placing 25 million things, even a success rate that sounds amazing, say 99.9%, still leaves thousands of dead pixels scattered across the screen. For a display, that's a reject. To sell one at a normal price, the process has to be so ridiculously reliable that almost none fail, across tens of millions of parts. That is an insane standard, and hitting it is what everyone has been fighting toward for years. But here's a lovely bonus that falls out of the design. Because each micro-LED tile makes its own light and needs no backlight behind it, the tiles can be built with almost no border, and simply snap together, edge to edge. Want a bigger screen? Add more tiles. This is why the flashiest micro-LED displays aren't really televisions at all. They're modular walls, assembled to whatever size you want, from a big TV to an entire cinema screen, with no scene you can see. So why is this finally happening now, in 2026? Because that mass transfer monster is being tamed. The machines got faster and far more accurate, the yield crept up toward that near-perfect bar, and defective LEDs can now be spotted and repaired automatically. As all of that improves, the cost of a big micro-LED screen has been falling fast, dropping toward a fraction of what it was just a couple of years ago. It's making the leap from $1 million showpiece to something that might actually hang on a living room wall. So the next time you stand in front of one of these impossibly bright, impossibly deep screens, take a second and really appreciate what you're looking at. It is not a screen with a lamp hiding behind it. It is a wall built out of millions upon millions of individual microscopic suns, each one its own tiny pixel, each one placed with almost unbelievable precision. For years, the picture was easy. It was placing the lights that was the miracle. If you just learned something genuinely useful, hit subscribe. We break down the tech you use every day.